Nowadays, we have become addicted to vibrant experiences. We are emotional junkies, living off of emotions, and suddenly our lives are solely governed by those emotions. This generates a great sense of frustration and emptiness. Understanding how our mind works and how our brain functions at such a crucial moment of societal digitalization, this conference wouldn't be the same prepared a year ago as it is now, where life circumstances have forced us to adapt strongly, directly, overwhelmingly to the digital world. But by understanding how the mind works and how it relates to the screen, we will be able to manage this digital world that is currently filling our lives much better. Happiness depends on the meaning each of us gives to our lives in a society that often loses its meaning, often loses its way. We have replaced meaning with sensations that are not always terrible, but some are bad. They can be food, massages, social media, pornography, sex, drugs, online gambling, shopping. These sensations are not always disruptive, but they destroy us when they replace the true meaning of life. Nowadays, we have become addicted to vibrant experiences. We are emotional junkies, living off of emotions. We have what's called the cult of the instant. We care about what we feel now, and sometimes we're not capable of letting our brain, our prefrontal cortex, which is capable of discerning good from bad, interesting from uninteresting, make decisions. Our lives suddenly become solely tied to those emotions, that constant drug given to us on the screen. Those sensations we talked about a few minutes ago. This generates a great sense of frustration and emptiness. Why? Because all those strong emotions we talked about, many of them are pleasurable, and it's important that we understand this. A few years ago, Facebook co-founder Sean Parker admitted at a medical event in Philadelphia that we created Facebook to generate addicts. He recognized that they realized the vulnerability of humans, the need humans have to feel loved, appreciated, recognized. Because let's not forget, nothing motivates humans as much as feeling loved, feeling valued, feeling that they matter to others. And they created the like button, and they created Facebook. Every time one consumes heroin, cocaine, marijuana, alcohol, engages in sexual relations, watches pornography, all of that generates pleasure. And pleasure is modulated in our brain by a hormone called dopamine. Dopamine works like this. I want to have a drink while I'm imagining how I'm going to go have that drink with friends at a bar. Automatically, the dopamine levels start to rise. It reaches its peak when I consume the alcohol, and then dopamine levels start to drop until it generates a sensation of emptiness that we all know, where I want more. That's how dopamine works. It's activated when I start to crave something. It reaches its highest point when I consume it, and when I stop consuming it, I have a need to keep consuming it. So every time I receive a like, every time I have interactions on social media where I feel loved, where there's all that feedback like, this information has been received, it has its message, this might interest you, those likes, those notifications generate sparks of dopamine in me. In other words, those bursts of dopamine generated by all this digital world function very similarly to drug consumption. In fact, nowadays, psychiatrists work with addiction to cocaine using very similar drugs that we use for addictions to social media, pornography, or video games, because the mechanism of action is very similar. But what generates that emptiness? What generates that void? What we have when we stop consuming is frustration and emptiness. And if it's emptiness, that feeling that nothing matters, and we go back to the beginning, where is the meaning of my life because I can't find it? And then I need to search more. Our brains are changing nowadays. When do we each look at our phones? In 3 general circumstances. First, when we work, we take a break, and there are others, stress and boredom. Who hasn't found themselves at a bus stop, picking up their phone while waiting to enter the doctor's office, getting upset with their husband, wife, partner, father, mother, and suddenly picking up the phone? Why? Because applications were designed to relieve stress. Meaning the screen was designed to provide relief. We ourselves have all experienced that moment when we are tired, stressed, can't take it anymore, and we need the screen. Whether it's to browse a news portal for sports, buy clothes on a website, or browse a photo-sharing social network like Instagram or Snapchat, whatever it may be, because suddenly you don't know why you feel better. Why? Because it's designed to relieve stress and boredom. Stress and boredom are basic in human beings. I often explain this to parents when they ask me about their children. And one of the things I tell them, which is super important to me, is that the people who succeed in life today, and when I say succeed, I mean those who are in control of their lives, who maintain a certain inner balance, who connect healthily with what happens to them, are the ones who know how to manage their stress and boredom. Because if you give your child a phone from a very young age, it's like you're putting a mini bar in their room and saying, whenever you're bored or stressed, don't worry. You can have a drink, a beer, a shot. We all think this is something like, well, the screen generates a similar process, but the same thing happens with adults. If we use the phone, the screen, every time we're stressed and bored, two things happen. First, we create a society with zero tolerance for frustration because I want something and I get it. I want sex and I have Tinder. I want pornography and I have any pornography app. I want to shop and I have online shopping that arrives the next day with Amazon Prime. I want to eat and I have a meal that arrives at my house in 20 minutes. I don't know how to wait. I don't know how to be bored. I don't know how to delay gratification. It's the era of immediacy. And the only two things in this life that bring happiness, or rather, the closest thing to happiness we can find in this world, have to do with love and work. And neither love nor work are immediate sources of instant gratification. They require effort, persistence, will, affection, dedication, time, and the ability to delay. If we want to be what we call happy on this earth, we have to learn to delay gratification. What is delaying gratification? And here I show you this image where you see a brain. The front part of the brain is called the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is basic, and I would love for those of you listening to remember what I'm about to explain. The prefrontal cortex is the area responsible for attention, concentration, problem-solving, and impulse control. In other words, it's responsible for almost everything in life. It helps us have willpower, pay attention, and overcome difficulties because we see possible solutions. When a baby is born, the baby's prefrontal cortex is completely inactive, meaning it's immature. The brain develops from the back to the front. What activates a baby's immature cortex? Three things: light, sound, and movement. And now that I have a baby, I see it all the time. With the baby, you play some music, someone crosses in front of them, and the baby turns their head, meaning their prefrontal cortex is activated. But what do you want for your child? What do we want from that baby? What do we want from children nowadays? As the prefrontal cortex develops in that child, we also want them to know how to pay attention. That is, their prefrontal cortex should activate in response to still objects, things that aren't luminous, things without a great uproar. In other words, that child should be able to pay attention to a teacher, listen to a conversation with their father, sit calmly in the waiting room at the doctor's office, meaning they have a well-established prefrontal cortex. What happens if you give that baby a tablet? If you give that child a phone, what is a tablet? What is a phone? Light, sound, and movement. And our brain works with a mechanism called use it or lose it. For those listening, since having a phone and looking up everything on the internet, has your memory improved? None. Because as we use the internet, Wikipedia for everything, our hippocampus, the brain region responsible for learning, shrinks. Who among us navigates better now that we have Google Maps, Waze, or any map application compared to 10 years ago? None. Because our brain, when not stimulated internally, causes the areas of that brain to atrophy and function worse. The same happens with the prefrontal cortex. If I only activate the prefrontal cortex with external light, sound, and movement, my prefrontal cortex will not last properly. We are witnessing a generation with no ability to pay attention, no capacity for concentration. with zero tolerance for frustration, with much impulsivity. And we have 10% of the population of the first world being treated psychiatrically with medications for attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. Attention deficit and lack of impulse control, meaning my prefrontal cortex fails. That prefrontal cortex, which is essential for delaying reward, for being able to make decisions, we are gradually having it functioning worse and worse. Those who succeed today are the masters of attention. In the 21st century, what we have are attention crises where we are unable to pay attention. In fact, what moves the world today isn't just drugs, mafias, pharmaceuticals, weapons, but the ability to retain the user's attention for as long as possible on a screen. And when they have our screen and have us hooked, they deteriorate us. You might ask, what can I do? First, turn off notifications so nothing lights up on my phone. And when they have our screen and have us hooked, they deteriorate us. You might ask, what can I do? First, turn off notifications so nothing lights up on my phone. If I want something, I'll be the one to pick up the phone, not the phone telling me to pick it up. Because if not, the phone dominates me. That screen completely flattens my prefrontal cortex, not creativity, not the ability to respond to stimuli. That is, if 1/10 of those listening to me remove notifications, you'll find yourself checking your phone much more in the first few days, but after 4 or 5 days, you'll realize you live much more peacefully. Second, reduce the use of the most active social network, which is usually Instagram, to a maximum of 15 minutes, half an hour per day, depending on each individual. Why? Because nobody goes on Instagram to look at a particular photo of something, but it's designed to hook us more and more. And we know it works through dopamine, through instant gratification, and it's designed to be that way. Third, try to put your phone on airplane mode occasionally. I'm of the theory, and many will agree, that nothing we like more than when you're with a person and you notice that person has all their senses focused on you, that person is listening to you and only you, and has all your attention. We love that nowadays. We know that when you have a phone in your hand and you're talking to someone, the person you're talking to feels a slight sense of abandonment. This is being seen with children. Studies are beginning to show that children feel abandoned by their parents whenever they are on their devices. We must be capable of letting go to set good examples for our children and let them know that we are present with them. One of the phrases I repeated the most during the lockdown was, if you can't go outside, go inside and analyze your inner self. Connect with your inner self. Meditate, pray. If you have beliefs, seek the best within you. Nowadays, everything is external. We don't have time to pause, to stop, to analyze our inner selves, and often, if we cut off that hyperstimulation, that excess of information, we reach serenity. I don't know anyone, I've read a lot throughout my life, who has discovered anything important in a frantic moment of hyperactivity or hyperstimulation. Whether it's someone sitting under a tree and watching an apple fall, or Aristotle strolling through the gardens of Greece, all the great discoveries in history have been moments of peace, of serenity, in times of calm. Whoever finds serenity in the small things gains strength for adversity.